Hi there, I'm Jerome Lewis and the co-director of the Extreme Citizen Science Research Group at University College London and an associate professor of anthropology. My research over the past 3 decades has mainly been in northern Congo Brazzaville, studying the lives and social organisation as well as the spiritual culture of Bambangele hunter-gatherers and their relationship to their forest, and today much more in relation to extractive industries who've been invited there by national governments and wildlife conservationists. That experience has led to the development of the Extreme Citizen Science Research Group, and in today's video I want to tell you about community protocols, which are a powerful means through which communities can try to organise their relations with outsiders by saying how projects which are going to affect their lives, their livelihoods or their territory should proceed, and what their roles within those projects will be. So first of all, we're going to cover the principles behind community protocols, and then we're going to talk about how to put them into practice, how to begin a community protocol process. We're going to end with some considerations about what the best questions to ask are in relation to establishing an effective community protocol in a community. So the concept of community protocols is not a new concept. It's of course existed in many traditions across the world, and it really refers to the protocols, the practices, the expectations, the procedures with which a community expect outsiders who come to them to do something in their territory or to do something in their community will comport themselves, what the expectations are for how they will share the benefits of their mutual activity, or whose labour and how and on what terms that labour will be applied. So effectively what a community protocol refers to is customary rules and procedures that Indigenous and local communities have for mediating their relationships with outsiders. In modern contexts, where many outsiders are now coming into remote areas, ethically sensitive development organisations now use a particular contemporary approach to community protocols, which we're going to be discussing today. And they are determined by a self-defined community with a close connection to a specific territory or area that is the foundation of their identity, culture, language, and way of life. It's documented, developed, and used in a participatory way by that community, and where appropriate, with the support of trusted outsiders. It's intended to promote appropriate recognition and respect of and support for community-specific customary values, ways of life, and stewardship of their territory or traditional area. It's based upon the community taking into account their own values, standards, procedures, rights, and responsibilities in dialogue with national and international laws and policies. And if you want to find out more about the formal ways that this is discussed, you're recommended to look at Shruman Jonas' 2012 publication that's linked in this PowerPoint. In short, a community protocol outlines on what terms the community will develop a participatory partnership with outsiders. It's therefore crucial that it's the community that decides how they wish to represent themselves, and that they're offered appropriate support to ensure the internal flow of relevant information, and given the opportunity to explain how they make decisions concerning consent. The community protocol will document the parameters, rules, and expectations of this partnership. So it's important to recognise that community protocols can be either aspirational or defensive, and they are often both. They are aspirational in describing how the community hopes to benefit from engaging with outsiders and how they expect outsiders to behave. But they're defensive by defining on what terms the community will engage with those outsiders and what terms they will not. For instance, they may insist that certain places or resources must be protected from damage by outsiders' activities. Often outsiders can have very different priorities and values to those of communities. For instance, many conservationists think that nature is protected by excluding all people, whereas many local people conserve their areas through an active engagement in hunting, gathering, fishing and planting, as well as ceremony, ritual and other practices. In the context of extreme citizen science collaborations, we recommend that the work towards establishing the community protocol happens alongside the free, prior and informed consent process. They are complementary to one another. The free, prior and informed consent process and community protocols both require trust, open, informed and free discussion, attention to the possible implications of community decisions, and effective mechanisms to ensure proper understanding of the information that is needed so that the community can make robust and informed decisions. The community protocol addresses the details of how the community will be involved in the project implementation. And it's important to remember that community protocols are fluid and can be updated over time as the context and situation changes. And more information can be found on this from Natural Justice and their 2016 publication that's linked to the PowerPoint. So now we're going to look at how to put community protocols into practice. Community protocols may stipulate the involvement of community members in the plans of outsiders and outline the relationship that is expected between them. Community leadership throughout the process is essential to promote a sense of ownership by community members, and this is pivotal to the success of the community protocol and its efficacy in managing relationships. This can only be achieved by consistently asking the opinion of community members and ensuring that everyone, including marginalized groups, are always aware of what and why issues are being discussed and relevant and why they're important. Ideally, facilitators from the community are best placed to design and lead the community protocol process, to respond to the ideas and the priorities that are expressed in the sessions. But if this isn't possible, then a sensitive outsider may have to do it. The sessions themselves can take many forms: meetings, mapping activities, interviews with elders or other knowledge holders, role-play games where people enact potential scenarios in order to explore the possible outcomes, and sometimes ceremonies. It really depends on what is most locally appropriate. In the photograph there, you can see the Ashaninka holding a 3-day-long meeting where the whole community participates in order to discuss how the community protocol will be elaborated. They took some decisions which in other contexts were unusual. So for instance, they decided that nobody should be paid for their work on the project, since the project was for the benefit of the entire community. They also decided how the project would be managed, who would care for the telephones that people were using to do their mapping work. They were designating who would be responsible for communicating with law enforcement authorities when criminal activities were identified on their territory. These are the sorts of issues that need to be discussed with care, because the implications are obviously potentially very risky and for communities if decisions are badly made or poorly thought through. The key is to ensure that all the necessary aspects and key outcomes of the plans are covered. And this can include data sharing, for instance. It's not simply what community will be doing, but who they agree to share their data with. In relation to Sapeli, we've focused on 5 main questions. What are the roles and responsibilities of the community members? Who will do the mapping? Who will go out and collect information? Who will guard and look after the telephones, make sure they're charged and ready to be used, report faults and so on? How will the data be used and by who? So what are the expectations of the use of the data? How will it be presented to those people for whom it's being collected? What forms of motivation or remuneration will be provided and how will this work? And these are often, after the project begins, potential areas of considerable conflict if they're not resolved in public prior to the beginning of the project. And of course, there will be issues that aren't possible to discuss in advance of them occurring. So how will unforeseen difficulties be dealt with? What are the processes the community will put into place? So as community protocols are about more than just how communities may interact with proposed plans, it may be necessary to carry out sharing sessions with community members on what their rights are in relation to the broader contexts. And this can involve moving between different communities who are participating, or ensuring that different members of the community, for instance, perhaps women who might be preoccupied with preparing food for their children, may not be present. So what efforts are you making to ensure that they are also participating? Maintaining the relationship on which the community protocol is based. Once a protocol has been agreed upon, it should be kept alive by bringing it into discussion with the community and updating it as situations change. A key area where it's especially valuable is when disputes arise between community members or with outside partners. In those contexts, the community protocol becomes the point of reference for arbitrating in the dispute. And this is really a huge resource for minimizing disruption to the project process. And thirdly, by putting external actors on notice. What that means is that other actors who may be involved in the plans or are relevant in some way are formally informed that the community protocol has been created. And this is important because it increases the likelihood that the protocol will be respected and followed. And this empowers community members in the process of informing those outsiders that they have terms for their engagement. So, thank you very much.